Hopefully everybody's doing all right. Yeah, it's starting to get tired early. Well, I've got good news for you on that department. So I was kind of thinking, so what we're going to do today, we'll finish on Monday. I mean, Friday. So I was sort of thinking, why don't we take a day off? What do you guys think? No, please no, anything but a day off? Yeah, okay. So I was thinking about this. I figured you guys would prefer to have a Monday off because then you can sleep in after the weekend. Yeah, sound good? All right, so no CS class on Monday. Um, how's that sound? Yeah? Okay. Now, Cole, you still have calculus, bro, at 9, but yeah. So, but but you get to sleep in or go get breakfast or do whatever it is that you want to do. Okay. So yeah, so we won't have class on Monday. Okay, so if you guys have a computer or a tablet or heck even your phone, pop it out because today we're gonna play a game. Yeah. Uh, and the link for this game is to make sure that the stream has Safari. Okay, so I put it on Canvas. So we're in the algorithms and procedural units module. For those of you who just joined us, what's the what's happening Monday during this class? Yeah, you guys are going to take like a really hard quiz, and but just you two. The rest of the people are going to sleep in a little bit. So, yeah, we're not going to have class on Monday. So, except you two, you get a really hard quiz. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, so pop on a canvas and then look in the module. I just published it called Algorithms and Procedural Units, and you should see the thing that says Towers of Hanoi Game. So just go to that, um, uh, or you can just go to math is fun /game/ Tower of Hanoi if you want to cut Canvas out of the loop here. Either way. Okay, so get that loaded. And actually, I'm going to see if this will work on a iPad. Does it work? Okay. The Towers of Hanoi. So mathisfun.com/game/Tower of Hanoi. And there are a million of these things out there, right? Different games that will do this. So, um, I mean, if you Google Towers of Hanoi, it's like the second or third or the very first hit, right? So, yeah. Okay, so here's the game, right? And hopefully Koi is with us this morning because Hanoi, of course, is a city in Vietnam, uh, as we all know and love. Um, so yeah, so there's some story behind this that the gurus would sit and do this with gold discs, and that the world would end when they finished the game. Uh, but they were playing it with like 1,000 discs or something, whereas here we have three. Okay, so just take a few minutes and play it. Okay, so what first off is the goal of the game? I mean, it doesn't actually, well, actually, it does say, right? Uh, we want to move all of the discs over to the third tower on the far right. Okay, but you can only move one disc at a time. So that's rule number one. And rule number two is you can't put a bigger disc on top of a smaller disc. Okay, so they have to stay sort of in order mostly. Okay, all right, so that's the game. So sit and play it for a few minutes and uh, curse as needed as you screw it up. Huh? Okay, we'll do it for 4, right? Well, for 3 discs, 7. We'll talk about why that's the case in a bit. See, you can't see my like evil smile underneath the mask because right now I'm just like, like I'm a, you know, evil mad scientist or, uh, villain from children's cartoons or something like that. Oh, shoot, indeed. And do you fail? Well, you have very successfully moved them to the middle disk, not the far right disk. Yeah, 1,000. And we'll actually talk about how many moves it would take if there were 1,000 disks, and assuming one move per second, how long that would mean for the age of the universe. You're already screwing it up. Yeah. Um, so this is I feel like this semester we spend half of it like telling you guys how sorry we are that the cool stuff we normally do we can't do because of COVID. And uh, that's certainly true with this. So I actually have down in my office 4 physical models of this with little wood discs. And I've been meaning to make more with Dr. Porter's awesome laser cutter um, and acrylic, or well, plexiglass basically, because I think that'd look cool. Um, yeah. So anyway, huh? 5. Ooh, bold. Well, then step up to No, don't step up to 1,000. See, now what we need is like Towers of Hanoi Battle Royale. I'm not sure how that would work, but you're like dropped into an island that has a bunch of Towers of Hanoi, and if you can solve them, then you kill people. And yeah. Yes, Mr. Hargraves, that is exactly correct. Mr. Hargraves has discovered the minimum number of moves. Uh, Now, the better question is why is it that, which we'll discuss. Hmm? Right. Bridges. Oh, the Koenigsberg bridges. Yeah. In that case, the puzzle's impossible, um, which is kind of interesting. Um, I was actually given a version um, of the Koenigsberg Bridge problem by a waitress at a steakhouse in Texas when I was like 5 or something. And it was one of those places where they put like butcher paper out on the table as a tablecloth. And then if there's a kid, they just hand the kid a bunch of crayons and off you go. So she gave me this puzzle, and um, I couldn't figure it out. And I started to kind of think, I wonder if this is not even possible. And she's pulling my leg. And it took me until I was like 14 or 15 before I'd learned enough math to then sit down and prove that in fact the problem was impossible and that it was an evil plot to keep a kid busy. Um, so yeah, 31 moves. Yeah, you noticing a pattern there? Well, all right. So are you guys kind of getting the hang of what the rules are, how the puzzle works, etc.? Right? Kind of making sense? All right, so I just turned you loose and basically said, here's the puzzle, here are the rules, figure something out, right? And some of you got lucky in a sense that for the three disc case, you solved it on your first go. Um, it's possible that you solved it on your first go, but you used more than the minimum number of moves, which, I mean, you solved it, but you just didn't do it with the minimum. Six discs? Ah, has anybody beat six yet? Okay, well, I think we got winner winner chicken dinner over there. Or can you do your what's your favorite Fortnite emote? Okay, good. Uh, um, yeah. Um, yeah. How many of you guys do play Fortnite? Just out of curiosity. Yeah. Okay. Still. Yeah. No. Like, or how many of you did play at one point and then it no longer became cool? One day. Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. So okay. Well, just curious. I mean, I'm very conflicted about Fortnite because on the one hand, like I have friends that work at Epic, and so the more boatloads of money that Epic makes off of Fortnite, right, my friends stay employed, right? So that's a good thing. Um, but then on the other hand, it's Fortnite, right? So anyway, all right. So I kind of turned you guys loose on this thing and with the intent of okay, just kind of play with it. But let's start to analyze it a bit more structurally, okay? And in doing so, we're going to figure out a couple things. First, we're going to figure out the formula that generates the minimum number of moves, okay, and why that formula is correct. And then also, we're going to start to notice something. Okay, so those of you who have now solved four, five, and even six show off discs um, have probably noticed that in order to do the four disc problem, you first have to know how to do the three disc problem, right? And to do the three disc problem, you have to know how to do the two disc problem, and to do the two disc problem, you have to do the one disc problem, which fortunately that's very easy. Okay, so what we want to do is kind of analyze this building up, and so um, we'll start with the case of, and I'm sorry that keeps cutting out on us. Let's start with, um, well, okay, that's annoying. It won't let us do two or one disk. Um, well, oh well. Okay, so let me actually pop this over here, and then, well, actually, uh, you know what? I don't think I can do this. I think what I'm going to have to do is, let's go over to my notebook. Okay, and I'm just going to write on here. So switch over to the iPad for those of you who are online. So you should see just a blank white screen at the moment. Um, okay, so let's take the special case of where there's just one disk. Okay, well, what's how do you do it? You just move it from peg one to peg three, and that's that. You're done. Okay. So in all of this, let me actually suppose that my three pegs, I'm just going to use letters to label them. I could use numbers, but I'm going to use numbers to label the disks. and that'll make the formulas and stuff a little easier. Um, yeah, okay, great. Uh, okay, so in order to move one disk from A to C, you just pick it up and move it. That's it. Okay, so your list of instructions is, I'm going to sort of think of this as a function in a sense, and the syntax for this is going to be um, that I'll write, I'm going to move it from which disk, from where to where. Okay, so that's just the way I'll write this sort of in shorthand. Uh, and in this case, we want to move it from A to C. Okay. Um, all right, so that's easy. What about the two disk case? Okay, well, now we have a choice. Okay, so when you played the game, right, the discs weren't numbered, they were just discs. So we need to choose a convention to number them. And we've got two options here. When there was only one disc, it was pretty obvious. The one disc we have probably is disc number one. What do you guys think? Wow, right? All right, but if there's two discs, what are the two different numbering schemes we could do? Okay, we can call the top one one, or we could call the bottom one, the biggest one. Okay, and it actually, I mean, in the end, it doesn't really matter which one we do, but we have to make a choice here as to what notation scheme we want to use. Okay, all right, so what do you guys think? Number one being the top disk, or number one being the big bottom disk? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So does that seem reasonable to you guys that in the game you add a bigger disk at the bottom when you go up by a number? So maybe that will just go with the top one being number one. Okay. Seem reasonable? Okay. So we have now committed to that choice, and everything that we write from here is going to depend on that. If we had made the other choice, so in a parallel universe, where we made the other choice, everything I would write down would look a little different, but the idea would be pretty much the same. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so our choice is to make disk number one always the smallest of the disks. Okay. Okay, so man, does anybody beat seven? Okay, somebody should be a computer science major. Yeah, well, how many of you guys are thinking the CS major? One, two, three, four, five, six. Okay, good. What about the minor? Maybe. Who's just here for an easy A? Good answer, my friend. Good answer. Um, yeah. So that was in terms of Admiral Akbar at the trap, right? So I actually have a picture of Admiral Akbar up on my bulletin board outside my office. And for a while, I would carry it in my bag, and anytime I would ask sort of a trap question, I'd hold up the Admiral Akbar, it's a trap picture. So yeah. All right. So we chose to make disk one the smallest. So what is the sequence of moves to do this with two disks? We need to first move disk one from where to where? A to B. Okay, and that gets it out of the way so that we can do 2 from A to C, and then what? Then we can move 1 from B to C. Okay, so notice that what we were doing was we used, in this case, peg B as sort of a temporary storage space to get something out of the way so that pegs A and C were free to move a bigger disk. Okay. Now, for the n equals 3 case, you guys have probably noticed that you've had to do this, where you had to kind of move something out of the way in order to move a bigger disk, right? But what you probably have noticed is that which peg is your temporary peg depends on where you are in the game, right? It's not always the same peg. In this case, we only needed a temporary peg in one situation, namely for the small disk. And then once we've got it out of the way, the big disk can move, and that's that. And then, yeah. Okay, good. All right, so now let's kick this up to 3 disks and write down explicitly the instructions. Okay, first off, how many should we expect? 7 at minimum, okay? And let's figure out the instructions to do it the minimum number, not the maximum, or I mean, more than that, okay? So, what's the, let me go back over to the game and let's actually just go through it, okay? And I'm gonna, those of you who are online won't be able to see these two things simultaneously. I'm gonna write down the instructions as we play the game. Actually, you know what? I can do that because I can do, let's see, how am I supposed to do this? I think if I do that, um, does anybody remember how to do the dual screen thing on the iPads? Okay. Uh-huh. There we go. Um, I don't think I did that right. Yeah, I didn't want to. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, and then I can resize it. Okay, well, let's just split it in the middle here. Okay, so, um, but you guys can't see it that way. Why is that? Well, that's bloody annoying. Okay, well, that was a brilliant idea, but for some reason, maybe that's a bug. Okay, whatever. Let me just go back over to Safari. Let's write them down. Okay, so, um, all right, so what's the first step? The tiny one from A to C. Okay, so I'm just going to scribble that down on the iPad. Ow, and bang my knee in the process. Which was not very humorous, even though that's, yeah, it was rather ulna. Okay, so move 1 from A to C. Check. Next step. Move 2 from A to B. Okay. Then move 1 from C to B. Okay. So notice that we've basically used both pegs B and C as temporary in different steps here. Okay, but after those 3 steps are finished, then what we have, and this is kind of how I want to think about it, is I have a big disk that I can move. That's easy. That's the n equals 1 case. And I also have 2 disks that I need to move. Well, that's the n equals 2 case. Okay, so, all right, so what's the middle move here? I need to move 3 from A to C. Okay, then I just need to move the top 2. Okay, so what do I need to do? I need to move 1 from B to A. Okay, and then I can move 2 from B to C. And finally move 1 from A to C. Okay, so Gucci, that was the sequence of steps. Okay, so for those of you at home, I'm going to go back to the iPad, and there are the 7 instructions that it took for us to do it. Now, what I want to do is I want to kind of group these and think of this as in 3 chunks. I've got these 3 instructions, I've got those 3 instructions, and I've got the thing in the middle. Okay, what are the 2 sets of boxed instructions? Yes. Okay. Right. So look at the up above the big horizontal line. I've got the instructions for when there were only 2 disks. Okay. And what's the pattern? 1, 2, 1. Right. Uh, what's the one difference though between, say, the 3 instructions that are at the very top of the page versus the 3 instructions that I've boxed, the versus these 3 instructions that I've boxed? Okay, so what's different about them and what's the same about them? Okay, that's the same. Right? So the same part is the 1, 2, 1. Okay, what's different? Permuted? Yeah. Okay. So notice that while the letters that are in the various positions are not the same, there's kind of a similar role to them. So look at, like, for example, the top one. You've got A, B, A, C, B, C. Okay. So the first 2 letters or the first 2 instructions are the same as each other. And then notice that, say, the B in the very top instruction matches the B that's the beginning of the bottom instruction. And here we've got C and C, right? So you guys see that, like, AA, BB, CC, AA, BB, CC, right? It's not the same letters in the same positions, but where, like, if I replace a B with a C, all of the B's got replaced with a C, right? So there's sort of a symmetry, if you will. Okay, all I've done is I've permuted the letters. Okay, does that match with the dude at the bottom? The group of three at the very bottom of the screen? Yeah, it does. It's a different permutation, okay? The letters have been jumbled up a different way, but they're all kind of like structurally it's similar. Okay, do you guys kind of see that? Okay, so what we are noticing is what's called recursion, okay? In order to solve the case of three disks, you first have to be able to solve the case with two disks, right? So it's sort of a self-referential process, and that's what we mean when I say the word recursion, okay? Now, I think maybe last time or the time before, I jokingly said, in order to understand recursion, you must first understand recursion. And those of you who had seen recursion before started laughing because you got the joke, and everybody else was like, derp? That's not funny. I don't get it, right? But why is it funny? Yeah, precisely because it's a self-referential thing, right? And defining the word recursion that way is the only word you're allowed to do this with in the English language because that's the very concept of the word is a self-referential process. Okay, so we can have a little bit of fun with this. So let me go over to, since I've got this on the screen, right? Where if you want to know something, anything, you go to Google, right? It knows all. How many of you guys have seen the movie AI? This is from like the early 2000s. It's Haley Joel Osment, who was a boy actor, child actor at the time, plays like a robot. And did you just get eight? You know what? I'm done. I'm going home. You teach the class. So, um, yeah. Okay. So, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. Never mind. All right. So we're gonna go to the Google, right? And recursion. So Google, right? If you mistype something, it offers a suggestion, right? So, for example, if I type, um, let me misspell recursion, right? Okay, and it's like, oh, did you wanted results for recursion? Like, I think you misspelled it. So I'm like, yep, I wanted results for recursion. Okay, so let me do recursion. Did you mean recursion? Well, yes, I did. Oh, wait, that's exactly where. Wait a minute. So this is an Easter egg that's built into Google, right? It's a joke. There are plenty of other Easter eggs built into Google. Okay, my favorite is yes. Maybe it doesn't work in the mobile version. Um, well, here, let me go over to this. Oh, did they disable it? Oh, that's too bad. Oh, oh, they've totally ruined everything. Oh, no. Well, okay. Okay, they've totally ruined everything. Okay, this is just outrageous, right? Okay. So it used to be the case that when you typed any of those things into Google, something funny would happen. Okay. So like the Zerg Rush, how many of you guys have ever played StarCraft or StarCraft 2? Right. Okay, so none of you get out, all of you. Don't get. yeah, Zerg rushes. Well, the barrel roll, what would happen is that the screen would, the window would spin around. Yes, no. Well, we've already established that none of this stuff works. Ah, okay. Well, you guys couldn't hear this, but in my audio it said I heard click, click, click. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. Okay. I did not know that one. That one's pretty cool. And now it's black and white. And if we click on the tornado, then it turns back into color, I guess. Yeah. Thanos? Hmm? Hmm. Yeah. Well, okay. So they've ruined Google. It's no longer fun. Okay, that's worse than Get Out. Like, yeah. Use Bing. Okay, the rest of you hold him down, and we'll ritually disembowel him. And, yeah, yeah. Well, or like castrate you so that you can't contaminate the rest of the gene pool with your. Huh, yeah, I was gonna say, anybody got a radish handy? Oh, womp womp. Okay. Anyway, so all right. So we've had a little fun. Okay, great. Let's go back to the notes here. Um, right. So what have we noticed? Right. We've noticed that to do this with 3 disks is essentially to do it with 2 disks. Do it. Take care of the dude on the bottom, and then do it with 2 disks again. Yeah. Okay. So structurally, the way I want to think about this is if I have 3 disks, I need to move the top two out of the way. Then I can move the bottom one. And then I want to move the top two from out of the way back to where they belong. Okay, so you guys see that the case of 3 involves 2 instances of doing the case of 2 and 1 instance of doing the case of 1. Okay, now if we were to write out the instructions for 4 disks, okay, this would take a while because how many instructions would we need? 15 for 4 disks. Okay. I don't want to write all 15 of them out, but we certainly could. Okay. So, what I want to do is I want to think of this group of 3 instructions as really being a single instruction. Okay. So, I want to start to think of this functionally. Okay. And so, what I want to do is I want to write an instruction. Okay, I want to write a function that I'll call Hanoi, and it's going to be, um, um, I need to specify in this thing how many disks do I need to move, where do they start, where do they need to end, and where is going to be the temporary peg that I use in the process. Okay, does that make sense, the notation that I'm coming up with here? All right, now I have to define how this function works, but so far all I've done is define the syntax of it. Temp, temporary, or like temporary store, the temporary storage peg. Okay, so what I then want to realize is that, for example, here, this is an example of doing Hanoi of 2. Okay, where I start at A, I end at C, and I use B as my temporary. Or sorry, no, I said that wrong. The first group of three is I start at A, I end at B, and I use C as my temporary. Okay. And then the second one is another instance of the same thing. Okay. All right. So I need to define what this means. And um, the way I'm going to define it, if there's only one disk to move, well, then I need to just move. Oh, crap. Okay. Yeah, okay. So now I'm starting to regret our choice about. So this is something that always happens in math, where you make a notational choice and then halfway through what you're doing, you regret making that choice and you wish you could go back to the other one. Okay. So the number of disks is not necessarily the same as um, uh, you know what? Let me say it this way. Let me actually rewrite this as um, okay. So here's sort of the problem. What would be the what would this look like if I was doing Hanoi of three? Okay, Hanoi of three should be do Hanoi of two, move disk number three, do Hanoi of two. Okay, so when I say the num disks, um, I really don't want to say it this way. And I didn't sleep very well last night, so my brain's not fully functional. Um, okay, how do I want to say this? Um, well, okay, I've got a couple of options here. One would be to specify both the number of disks and the number of the starting and the smallest and the biggest disk in the stack. Um, I think thinking about this, I probably wanted to go back and rename the biggest disk as disk number one rather than the smallest disk. Okay, do you guys kind of see why that would be handy here? Maybe? No? Okay. Um, all right. So I'll rewrite this and we'll start with that first thing on Friday. But the the there's sort of two issues here to why I'm writing this function the way that I am. The function will look like sort of like this. It'll be move um, if there's only one disk, do a move. If there's more than one, do it for one fewer disk, right? So the way I want to think of this is if I want to do 3 disks, I need to move 2, then move 1, then move 2, okay? And for 4 disks, here's how I want to think about it. To do 4 disks, I need to move 3, move 1, then move 3. But how do I move 3? I move 2, I move 1, I move 2. But how do I do 2? I move 1, I move 1, I move 1. Right? So you see how this is kind of unwrapping almost like an onion, um, or which actually, have you guys been to Outback, right? Ever, right? And you get the onion that's like has like 10,000 calories because it's battered and deep fried. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of the idea here that we want, and I'm just stumbling on the notation here, but that's basically the idea. Okay, now the other key idea here is that I have to have a base case, meaning there has to be some bare minimum level because otherwise this recursion will go on forever, and that can't happen. Okay, so or if it does, that's a bad thing because that means we can't throw it onto a computer, right? You can't have an infinite process running and expect your computer to not explode. Um, okay, so yeah, so there has to be a bare base case that everything is. Now, hopefully, you see why the pattern here of the minimum number of moves is always 2 to the number of disks minus 1. What's the minimum number of moves for one disk? Well, 1, right? That's easy. Well, that's 2 to the first minus 1. What's the minimum number of moves for 2 disks? 3. Well, that's 2 to the second minus 1. For 3 disks, we had 7. Well, that's 2 cubed minus 1, and so on. And in the recursion, we actually, or I mean, in the breaking this down, we actually see it because it's 2 copies of the previous case plus 1. And if you sort out the arithmetic, that's the same as 2 to the n minus 1. Okay, so let's go back over to Safari real quick because what I want to do is let's take the story of the universe will end if we've got 1,000 of these things. All right, how many moves would it take to do it with 1,000 disks? Well, it would take that many moves, right? Which is 1 times 10 to the 301, basically. That's a very large number, okay? Let's assume, oops, that the people playing this can do 1 such move per second. Well, that's 2.5 times 10 to the 283 times the estimated age of the universe. That's a big number. Yes. Well, I mean, has the universe ended yet? I mean, the way 2020 is going, I wouldn't be shocked if, you know, right. I mean, we've had what? Coronavirus, murder hornets, uh, multiple hurricanes at the same time. Kobe Bryant died. What else has happened? Huh? Oh, yeah. And then, of course, Friday, Justice Ginsburg passed away. Um, they've got the Easter eggs off Google. Yeah. Yeah. 2020 kind of sucks, doesn't it? So, oh, and then, yeah, TikTok. God, that's a whole mess if there ever was one. All right. So anyway, we'll kind of quit here, but askew. Does it like tilt? Oh, that's cool. Yeah. All right. So we'll pick back up with this on Friday. Uh, yeah. All right. See you guys later. Have a good rest of your day.